What is going on? Welcome to the Crossing Ken Garage. And you can see it's still a little bit chilly around these parts, but it's going to be a hot topic because you're in Crossing Ken. Welcome to the family. I'm Randy,
And I'm Kristen.
and we are here today to tell you all there is to know. Well, all that maybe we know. Well, maybe something about the top British bands for the British invasion, at
Now,
least according to us.
now, as y'all might have noticed from this title, these are bands besides the Beatles. We all know the Beatles were the leaders, the kings, the Fab Four, whatever
I,
of the British
I
invasion.
don't know about that, Christian. I think the Beatles actually started. They were capitalized. Yeah, absolutely. The things that you said, absolutely true. They capitalized on something that was brewing in the American music scene at that point in time, but the Americans didn't quite know how to put the spin on it.
But when people think of British invasion as far as music goes, they think of the Beatles.
Immediately, yeah,
Today we are highlighting five bands besides the Beatles that were integral to the British
absolutely.
invasion. Now, please note, this is not a countdown. We are kind of going in a random order. We're just going to kind of have a lovely discussion about five bands from the British invasion that we absolutely adore.
And needless to say, someone wasn't around during the British invasion.
It's negative
I
age.
was just barely. So, I mean, if you start taking a look at the music from the 60s, you quickly realize there was a revolution that just went crazy, especially ones right around 63, 64. At the time my generation and folks my age were born. It was absolutely going bonkers how, especially bands from Britain and England, but the bands that we're going to talk about have exquisite contributions to that revolution in music.
All right, so let's get started. Probably my favorite band on this list with The Who. The founding members were Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, John Entwistle, and Keith Moon. Some of their most popular songs are Who Are You, Won't Get Fooled Again, Baba O'Reilly, I Can See for Miles, and My Generation. Now, before Daddy gets started, I want to make a note. Half the reason anybody my age will know music of The Who is because their songs got used as the theme song for every iteration of CSI.
Exclusively. I mean, that was one of the things that attracted us to the series when we began watching it, binging it after it was,
Aired.
it aired. I mean, it had been on several years
The
whenever we
only one we
first.
watched live was CSI Vegas.
Right, and it's all of them. And Christians, these were classic songs that got reintroduced to a generation of crime scene investigation nerds whenever they watched them on the TV show. The Who probably overall, they'll top one of it. They'll come close to matching one of the other bands. They're still touring. I look for
Son's
them to.
Pete Townsend, right?
Yeah, Pete
Because he
Townsend's.
passed away. No.
No,
Oh,
not nobody from the Keith Moon, the drummer, passed away before
and
really they saw the height of their careers explode. My generation, we really embraced the Who in
that
the
song's been
'80s.
covered a lot.
Which one?
My Generation.
Oh, without a doubt. I wasn't even talking about the song. I was
Oh.
talking about my generation. That's okay. They are used interchangeably a lot there, talking about my generation. Anyway, sorry, I'll try and clarify that for the future. But anyway, we really embraced the Who because a lot of us were in college. We didn't want to get fooled again. We were asking a lot of these, exactly, a lot of those kind of questions. And Keith Moon was nuts as a drummer, absolutely bonkers. Go and watch their Ed Sullivan show where he's just destroying a kit. But he was one of the most brilliant drummers ever known mankind. Passionate, absolutely passionate. Died of a drug overdose, or at least the consequences of having way too many drugs. They do the Who, that is. I believe they still tour together. Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend have a good relationship. They're not like some of these other bands where they were just like
And they all pretty well have some solo careers, right?
Oh
At
yeah,
least Pete
absolutely.
Townsend
Yeah,
does.
Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey.
I
They
thought
both
so.
yeah, they both had some Pete Townsend probably more so because he's a better in my opinion a better songwriter. And then Roger Daltrey had a couple of records in the 80s that did okay. Yeah, absolutely. Pete Townsend, that one song, "Let
My
My Love
love
Open the
open
Door,"
the door.
right? And if it is one of I have to mention this, it's one of the biggest read songs that we used in Tuesday's Musical Notes, the blog that I've written for over a decade, and um, go check that out sometime. Just let my love open the door. Pete Townsend, Tuesday's Musical Notes .blogspot.com.
All right, that was the Who. Moving right along,
Who's the next one?
the Rolling Stones.
This band.
The founding members are Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, Brian Jones, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts. Some of their most famous songs are Satisfaction, Paint It Black, Miss You, and Sympathy for the Devil. Now, we have talked about the Stones before. Sympathy for the Devil made its way onto our top 13 spooky songs. I will have a link somewhere up above our heads to that video.
It's also a song that we chose in Tuesday's Musical Notes land. The Rolling Stones are they're probably the most prolific band on this list, surpassing the Who because they still at 155 years old are
Gold.
touring. Keith Richards
Richards.
and Mick Jagger, they're pals, and they have made a stowed of money. The Rolling Stones, yeah, Mick Jagger's even had a decent solo career. Charlie Watts died here a couple of years ago. He was that classic rock and roll drummer that kept a beat, and that's all that they needed him to do. The Stones have set a benchmark for bands, not just British bands, but for bands for generations. Because more so than the Beatles, they incorporated blues and um, you know, just they were not poppy, and that's the only way I know how to describe it. They weren't a pop band. They broadened the entire genre of rock and roll to incorporate blues licks, maybe even a few country licks, and definitely lyrically some expository things that made people say, "What did they just say?" What did
They
just
also
come
have
out?
gotten referenced in modern day pop culture. I think back in like the early 2000s, there is a song. I don't know who does it, but it's called Moves Like Jagger.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's making fun a little bit of the way Mick Jagger dances.
Yeah,
Or
well, it's more Jack Sparrow than it is anything
well,
else,
I mean, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger were inspirations, and Johnny Depp has been very vocal. I mean, Keith Richards freaking played his dad in the
Yeah,
Pirates of the Caribbean
for
franchise.
Captain Jack Sparrow. So
Savvy.
yeah, savvy. So the Rolling Stones, again, off of the list that we're giving you today, it is I would say they've made probably a more lasting impact on music.
Alrighty. Up next, we are discussing the Moody Blues. Their founding members are Graham Edge, Denny Lane, Mike Pinder, Ray Thomas, Clint Warwick, and Justin Hayward and John Lodge. Their most famous songs are Nights in White Satin and Tuesday Afternoon and Gemini Dream.
And Gemini Dream, which is the song that really brought them to my gener my, the group of people who are my age.
You can say My Generation
I can
now.
say My
They
Generation
have
now.
a song called My
Right,
Generation.
right.
I'm
The
not confused. I'm there now.
Nights in White Satin is this ethereal song that really brought them into prominence and brought them in as a British band, in British invasion type band. The Moody Blues are still touring. Justin Hayward and I think John Lodge are leading that group. And like I said, they did a thing called Wildest Dreams in the '80s, Gemini Dream in the '80s, and they really had a resurgence in I want to say 80, 81, 82, maybe 83
Mhm.
that brought them back. It really was. That time period was really kind of a second British invasion, and
I've heard that.
I have to say that the Moody Blues wound up being bigger in that second British invasion than they were the first. They made an impact, don't get me wrong, but they really, Tuesday Afternoon, great song because Tuesday's my favorite day of the week.
Gemini Dream.
That's right, that's right, and it's a good, just really good
That's the
songs.
song I know, so that's the one that's playing in my head.
Yeah. So we just go back and check out the Moody Blues music. I think you would.
Underrated band.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And their sounds. It's just go check out the Moody Blues. I think you'll be surprised at how many songs of theirs that you know.
Alrighty. Up next, moving right along, we have the Kinks. The founding members are Ray and Dave Davies, Pete Quate, and Mick Avoy. And their most famous songs are You Really Got Me, Lola, and Come Dancin'.
Come Dancing, another one of those. They were part of the second British, invasion in the 80s. A lot of folks I discovered their music with
You Really Got Me.
with Van Halen's version of "You Really Got Me." And
that was a
it's a
cover.
cover, absolutely. And I have to say, that is one of those covers that almost equals. I mean, they're pretty
I have
tough
a video
steps.
coming where I get to enjoy covers. It's going to be all mine. He doesn't get to complain about it.
Check
so.
out my cover video at a
Link
previous Crossing Kin about how covers are never as good as the originals.
Anyway, talk about the Kinks.
Check
Danny.
your bingo charts. The Kinks were the Kinks had a great impact just because they were brothers leading, fronting a band. They were kind of the CCR of British invasion bands at that time. They too had their falling out, and I mean to this day, the Davies brothers really don't have a whole lot to do with each other. Come Dancing was one of the last things that they did, and that's really is good stuff. Good stuff.
Alrighty, last up. And I'm really excited to talk about them just because I know their music a little bit better than some of the other bands. We have the Animals. Their founding members are Eric Burden, Hilton Valentine, Chaz Chandler, Alan Price, and John Steele. Some of their most famous songs are Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood and House of the Rising Sun. I will say there are at least two awesome covers of Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Animals, for giving us that. And then House of the Rising Sun, that also has been covered. The Animals are a band to cover. They are. I have learned.
One of the things that you quickly discover about the Animals is that Eric Burden was huge. And I mean, even the band becomes eventually Eric Burden and the Animals. So he really becomes his vocal style is just it's unmatchable in a lot of ways. The songwriting about the House of Ill Repute in the House of the Rising Sun
had like a blues feel.
a very blues feel, and a lot
feel.
of their stuff is kind of dark.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the Animals certainly a phenomenal nominal contribution to the British invasion. But they really didn't make it very far out of the British invasion. Eric Burden did some solo things. I think, in fact, he came around. Eric Burden in War seems to stick in my mind for some reason. I don't know. He had several different bands that he played with after he left the Animals, and the Animals. I think they even continue to tour today, in some form. I'm not sure if it's with any of the original members.
It might be with Chaz Chandler because I feel like I remember hearing that name in relation.
That's very possible. Very possible.
But Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood.
It's a phenomenal song.
I love that song. It got used. It's not the Animals version. It's one of the covers.
Right.
But it got used in the trailer for Leverage Redemption.
Right.
So that song now is just like, it's now eternally connected to Leverage, which makes me love it even more.
Which is funny because Leverage Redemption is set in
New Orleans. There is a house in New Orleans. Connection. I highly doubt that Dean Devlin intended that, but you and I can find those connections.
You pick those up, don't you? Let me go back one thing. Yeah. The band that had Denny Lane in it.
Moody Blues.
Moody Blues. He was one of the founding members of the Moody Blues.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also integral in the 70s
Mhm.
with another leader of a British band whom we started the conversation off. He and Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney did Wings. Yeah,
Said that Denny
yeah,
was
Denny
part
Lane.
of
Yeah,
was
yeah.
part
So I
of
mean,
Wings.
you've got to look. A lot of these artists either went on to have great solo careers, or as their bands disbanded,
Mhm.
they formed other bands. You know, McCartney left the Beatles, Denny Lane left the Moody Blues. They came together and did some incredible, incredible stuff as Wings.
And then some others just had some decent solo
Right, and
careers.
you know, Roger Daltrey, Pete Townsend's still putting records out.
Mike Pinder sounds
I
familiar.
think he is
Produce?
yes, more producer and or something along those
Yeah.
lines. You know,
Same with Pete
engineer,
Quake.
something like that.
His name sounds
A
familiar.
lot of these guys, the ones that are still living, still have a great lot to do.
If you guys know what they're up to, let us know down in the comments below.
Absolutely.
I listed them for that very reason. So if you guys know more than we found on Wikipedia, let us know.
Yeah, and their lasting contribution, they continue to contribute. That's their lasting contribution. Much like the Rolling Stones, with the exception that they're not out there like the Stones are. The Stones, you could still see them. I mean, they were relevant into the 80s. They really need a hit bad right now to make them
I want them
relevant
to do
to
the Super Bowl.
a whole other. They've done the Super Bowl.
I want them to do it again. I want them to do a Bond theme.
Uh, that would be good, but
That's not going to
that's
happen.
interesting. No, no, I don't think it'll happen. So that's our kind of our wrap up of the British invasion. That was not the Beatles.
Besides the Beatles.
Yeah, we don't get us
Don't
wrong.
get us wrong. The Beatles have some great tunes. They
We
do.
and I've got a lot of their stuff,
Every last bit of it is on our iTunes.
and it's good. But it was good for the 60s.
Yeah.
You
There's
know,
some of their stuff from the 70s that's good.
while my guitar gently weeps, you know, some of the
Really?
things, absolutely. There's some things that'll always be
That's from
timeless.
71.
We have to say, however, some of these other bands, you know, the breakup of the Beatles really allowed them to come into
Their own.
their own. And the Stones was certainly one of those, certainly Moody Blues.
The Who, Pinks, and the Animals.
That's right. And those are our just a listing, you know, good bands that we like.
Yeah.
Not necessarily even our
Like
favorites.
I said, this wasn't a countdown. This was just us highlighting a few bands that we liked.
And we liked them very well.
No, that was awful.
Okay.
Daddy should not do British accents. No, sir.
Welcome to Corson King.
No, you sound like Bert from Mary Poppins. Stop
That's Dick Van Dyke trying to do a British accent.
Yes, no.
Also coming out in the 60s.
Right, before Daddy insults the entirety of the British subcontinent, we are gonna wrap it up here.
I'm doing it all hand tapping. Oh, that's Irish, but we're Scottish.
Okay, that's it for us here at Cross.
We're so glad that you are a part of the family and can enjoy just some of this. So we will, you know, hopefully join you in a couple of weeks with something maybe that, you know, something more interesting than British invasion bands that weren't the Beatles.
But until next time, I'm Kristen.
I'm Randy.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Later.